Yes, hello everybody, and welcome to the Full Course Yellow at the earlier time of 8:30. It's all a bit strange tonight, sort of getting ready for all this. It seems very early, but we're at the new family-friendly time of 8:30. So the In Pit Lane Aftershow has become the In Pit Lane Kickoff Show. So welcome. So I hope you'll be joining us on Channel 31 at 9:30. So we won't be dragging on until all ungodly hours. We'll be getting out of here before 9:30, so that you can watch this week's edition of In Pit Lane, where we'll be previewing the Australian MotoGP at Phillip Island this week. Though, although it might, whether we have a Phillip Island Grand Prix might be a different thing, depending on what happens with the situation down at beautiful Phillip Island. There it is at the moment. That was from the Honda team this afternoon when they went on a track walk. It turned out to be a track wade, basically, but that's down at Stoner Corner, so that's what it looks like at the moment down at Phillip Island. Obviously, this weather, wherever you are in Victoria, Tasmania, southern New South Wales, over in South Australia, there's a huge band of rain, lots of flooding everywhere. I hope that you're coping well. I hope that everything is safe and sound where you are, and we'll try and give you a bit of a distraction over the next sort of 45 minutes to 45 to 50 minutes. Joining me this week to help in this, we've got Craig Doc Ladigo also joining us at the new earlier time. See, this is a benefit. We get Richard Outram is joining us as well, because he doesn't stay up late these days, and also joining us, of course, Peter Johnson as well. So g'day guys, how are we?
Very good, thanks Brett. Just while the other boys get their stuff off mute, but time to break out the wetsuits, and all we have to do is just go out into the road, and we can do some kneeboarding or some slalom, I think, around the light posts.
Incidentally, Dave not with us, because he's heading down to Phillip Island. Obviously, he'll be officiating down there and helping out, I imagine, with the medical team down there on the weekend.
Congrats.
So
he sold his Beamer during the week as well too. I did happen to notice. He didn't have it on the market very long and got snapped up very quickly.
Yes, well, that's good, but whoa, hot mic. So, which I take it that's my mic is a bit hot, Tony. So I'll turn that down a bit. So there you are. Is that any better, guys?
Yeah, it was probably a little bit crackly, but no, that's not too bad, I suppose.
Okay, it's too early.
You do have the biggest mic in the room right now, though.
I don't like to boast, but I mean, it's not the size of the mic. It's how you use it. I mean, I think everybody knows that.
Big black thing over there.
That's funny. That's what she said. Now coming. What about the socking? Well,
we've started early tonight, Richard. Where will we go with this one, Richard?
We practice safe broadcasting here on In Pit Lane.
Family time, as you said, though, so we can't swear until after 9 o'clock, or we can't feed the gremlins either. Yeah.
No, that's for sure. There, g'day, box. Love the kickoff show. Yes, that's it. So yes, we're kicking off. As I said, do turn over tonight, and also straight afterwards we go straight into the premiere on YouTube as well. So if you're watching us on YouTube, just hang around on YouTube. Just flick over to tonight's program. Our guest Terran Fleming, a young rider, and I tell you what, I mean, we don't want to give too much away, but wasn't he an impressive young kid?
He was a little bit in awe of the situation. We didn't have much time to prepare him, but he did exceptionally well. He's a great young fella. So he's just, he's not even a teenager yet, and he has high aspirations. The lucky little devil gets to be in some very esteemed company in the next.
I just love the way he casually says on the program. It's like 12 years old he is, and he just casually says I'll be riding at Phillip Island, and you ask him how fast. I'll be about 140 kilometres an hour. It's like 12-year-olds riding at 100 and.
That was 140. That was about the speed after I got on. I was on the Monash. No, be careful.
No.
I was riding home from the Monash on Tuesday night as well.
And hello to some of our viewers, our friends from the Victorian Police Motorsport Club, and of course Craig is joking. Craig is just playing a character on television. Craig would
104.
never break this.
I realise that they do a 10% inflation rule on their speed cameras, so I knew if I was doing only between 100 and 104, I'm deemed about 100 anyway. But yeah, it was. Yeah. Thank God for the beautiful night we had on Tuesday night, though. Look what's happened now since subsequent. So
Yes, it would have been pretty chaotic. Would have been pretty chaotic there. Yes. Nice point, Andrew. Yes, Daniel Ricciardo has also has jumped in on that and said that perhaps things should have started earlier, but as it worked out beautifully for us. I mean, because we got to watch Bathurst. They basically crossed the finish line at Bathurst. Shane did his burnout celebration and burnout on his tyres.
That was going to be heavily sanctioned, I saw beforehand.
I don't think it would have mattered what they did. They could have had, they could have had armed guards around the place. Shane was doing that burnout. He shredded that tyre, and then he burned himself out the next day, as we all saw the next morning.
That was so funny.
You talk, Garth.
Yeah, the look on Garth Tander's face.
Depends on which way the wind was blowing.
Yeah, so congratulations to Shane and Garth. We'll talk about Bathurst in just a moment. We'll go through the rest of the people. Then we've got Giuseppe is joining us as well. Go Giuseppe, how are you? Said Tony joining us. Paul Vandenacker is joining us once again. I turned it down a little bit more, so I mean, but yes, look, as you well know, Paul, I'm louder than most people in any.
I've got to interject a little bit here because Knackers needs a bit of an accolade spent on him because he's very prolific with his posts on Facebook. Knackers is, and we're all friends with him, of course. So he's pops up quite regularly, and it's to do with the flag marshalling stuff. And I do have to take exception to one of the, I think it was the Newcastle Racing Club up north, of course, because, Paul can sometimes do 3 meetings in 3 weeks and flying interstate. And one of the posts for Knackers was he happened to, one of his mates, I think, put up, there was a post about a shout out to all the flag marshals down at the Chase at the Bathurst 1000 on the weekend that has just gone, and they were the busiest crew going around because of obviously the conditions that they were all, part of. The trouble was though, the Newcastle Racing Club up there didn't put a picture of the chase at Bathurst. They put one at Winton from 2013, and it had Knackers in the bloody picture of it. So, guys, if you're going to post up in Queensland, if you get on the sugar cane a little bit too much and it starts going to your head, at least put one of the chase that is at Bathurst, not of 2013 Winton Motor Raceway. Congratulations for getting your mug out there, Knackers, and your mate as well too, and your big yellow raincoats.
Speaking of which, heading up to Winton tomorrow. Yes. Now at this stage, and we say at this stage, Winton is still on. They've said this afternoon. However, the whole Benalla and Wangaratta area are both under flood watch at the moment. The King River is flooded. It always floods up there. I know. Melissa was from Wangaratta and spoke a lot about the flood every time. Was always worried about her family around winter time because there was often really big floods in Wangaratta and around that area, and down to Benalla. So Benalla is on flood watch. So is Wangaratta. So if you are heading up to Winton for the Formula Festival up there, the all open wheel meeting and the big Formula 5000s, just keep an eye out before you head off tomorrow. But at this stage, it is definitely going ahead at this stage.
Instead of actually on the track up when you're going up there, proceed with caution before you go.
Yes, so good day to Maurice. Maurice is joining us as well. Dave Howard also joining us. And Paul is telling us that, yes, that was, yes, and the recovery of James Courtney at turn 11 at Winton in 2013 from the Supercars round. So that's where that photo was from.
Very funny looking chase photo.
Now, this is interesting. Yes, any of us blokes heading to the World Supercross at Marvel Stadium, I have tried to contact them because Doc and I did the not the World Supercross. This is the World Supercross is now promoted by Tony Cochran, amongst other people. I've been onto them. I've been trying to get onto them for the last sort of 4 to 5 weeks to try and find out if we could get someone on the show, if we could go out and do a story on it. I've had absolutely zero response from them at all. So unfortunately, at this stage, we're not going out there. Would have liked to have gone out and done some stories from there, but they've not responded. Yeah, so they've not responded. There you go. Yep, that's who was that with?
That's Ricky. Ricky and
Ricky
and myself. He's the goat of all time. He's won just about he won the World Supercross Championships, I think, about 3 or 4 times over about 5 or 8 years or something like that. And they were in 2-stroke, they were in 4-stroke, and he had some massive injuries in between. And I think one of them he had a big one. It was like a ACL or something with his knee, I think.
Well, that was his first, and he certainly wasn't 100% fit then, but he was really keen to come out. And he was terrific to deal with. We had a great day out there for that Supercross Masters thing, and it was hoping to get out to Marvel at some stage, and I thought that they'd probably have a press day or something. And I sort of said, look, can you put us on the mail? Can you let us know what's happening? Can we get someone in? As I said, I've sent quite a few emails off, but nobody's responding, which seems to be about the way it's going. I see Mark Jones, our mate up in Queensland. Mark, he's sort of Mr. Motorsport in Queensland, and he was having a go at the mainstream media and the ABC in particular for sort of the lack of coverage of mainstream motorsport, and what he said, the lack of coverage of Bathurst, particularly when you consider how popular it was, and we'll talk about that in just a second. But he was also pointing out the fact that the mainstream media sort of ignored motorsport, and the problem is it's not so much the mainstream media ignores motorsport; it's motorsport ignores the mainstream media. It's so hard, and as I said to him, compared with other sports we've dealt with, and I've done stuff with the AFL, with Cricket Australia, with Athletics Australia, with the Ice Hockey League, a number of Tennis Australia, all those, they are fabulous to deal with. We do a number of shows over the years, the AFL related shows on RMI TV. And they're just a pleasure to deal with. They're incredibly professional. You contact them, they contact you back. You make a request. If they can't grant the request, they'll say, sorry, we can't do that, but would you like someone else? Or here's another suggestion for you. They're proactive. They want to get their message out. They want to make it inclusive. Motorsport, you're damn lucky if you get a response from any of them. So
as far as the as other entities that you just mentioned, Brett, I can second that and motion carry it, because as you know, I've had a fair bit to do on the AFL ranks, and I am still slightly outside the system. But any sort of contact I still make, they bend over backwards to say, what can we still do for you? It's talking.
Yes, when you deal with those organisations, and I always get, and I'll get complaints again probably from to round up the usual suspects, but they go, you're always whinging about the motorsport does this and motorsport does that. The reason that you say these things is the sport could be. I mean, look, obviously Bathurst was incredibly popular. Let's not forget what happened on the weekend. The telecast of the Bathurst 1000 over the weekend outrated the NRL Grand Final. It's the third most popular sporting telecast of the Australian television year. The first, of course, was Ash Barty winning the final at the Australian Open. Second, not that far behind, the AFL Grand Final, and then not far behind that was Bathurst. The NRL Grand Final, the rugby league, was pushed way back. And then that's about the first time that's happened in a long time. So you had great ratings, fabulous ratings for the Bathurst 1000, despite the weather, terrific crowds. So I suppose they do, because what I always get back is we don't need to promote this. We've got all the people we need, and
I had both coverages on. I had KO and Channel 7 on. And Channel 7 for the Saturday, and the Friday was full of puff pieces. and very little car racing.
Yeah, well, that's it's a difficult one to do. It's the same with the coverage of things like the Melbourne Cup and all the rest of it. They realise that they've got a lot of once a year viewers who tune in, who like the people who are tuning in and who pay the money for KO and for Fox Sport are probably far more hardcore motor racing people who want to see all of the support categories. They want to see all the behind the scenes stuff in terms of and discussion of the mechanicals of it all and the behind the scenes thing. A large percentage of the people who tune in on Channel 7, that's there once a year. It's like me tuning into the old the water skiing at Moomba every year. I mean, for one weekend of the year we all became water skiing experts, and we'd all sit there and go, "Oh, he left that cut a bit late," and "Oh no, that's the other. He didn't nail that backflip," and all the rest of it. We knew all about it, but we weren't really that interested in the sport that we'd follow it, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So they do like those puff pieces. And speaking of which, like for the Melbourne Cup coverage, which is coming up, someone who does those so-called puff pieces is a guy called Neil Kearney. And if you know television in Australia, you'd know the name Neil Kearney. Well, Neil is going to be our guest on In Pit Lane, not this coming week, but the week after. Neil is going to be joining us in the studio, in the RMO TV studio, to talk about his new book about the history of Longford. Apparently Neil grew up in Longford and had lots and lots of memories and decided to write a book about the days of when the Grand Prix circus basically came to a very small town in Tasmania and raced through the streets there. All of the big names were there, so that's going to be a lot of fun. So Neil Kearney coming up in a couple of weeks' time on In Pit Lane. Okay, So anyway, let's talk about Bathurst. Roland Dane's come out and immediately sort of said that he would like to. He believes that the race should have started under a safety car. He said that the conditions were not ideal, and particularly for a 1,000 kilometre race, and with so many sort of co-drivers behind the wheel, it would have been much safer and better off for the race as a whole if they'd have started behind the safety car and got a couple of laps in and just sort of cleared the track and got their bearings. Found out where all the problems, where all the rivers were, where all the mud was, and then sort of taken the race from about lap 2 or 3 or something. I don't know. What is Richard? What do you think?
Well, they've run races in weather like that. They had already spent 2 days or 3 days up there. They knew where all the water was. These guys have run into each other when it's been bone dry. Yeah, they're quite capable of getting out, doing the first couple of laps with running into each other or without running into each other. So, yeah, no, I don't agree with him. I would have run if I was in a Hyundai.
Yeah, well, I think the thing was, it's as he points out, it's you're sort of damned if you do and damned if you don't. I think that I don't know about Peter saying online, Peter McKinnon saying their inexperienced co-drivers shouldn't be been allowed to have started, but I think that's a team call. And I think some of the teams made the wrong decision. I think if I was sort of a team strategist or team principal there, under the circumstances, because of those really difficult conditions, I'd be saying, look, under normal circumstances we put the co-drivers in, but you haven't had opportunities to start in these conditions. The conditions are really bad. Let's get the people. No guarantee it was still going to be safe, but it would have been much better probably if they'd have had the full field of of the number one drivers in there who are a bit more experienced and would hopefully be a bit more sensible about it all. But Pete, what do you think?
You had a co-driver who was Jamie Whincup, who actually spun in the water and hit somebody. So
you got a point.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's funny that because I see that like a few people have pointed that out, and it's funny how much sort of like anger and sort of passion Triple Eight and the support of Triple Eight has online, because if you go and have a look at something like Speed Cafe, any suggestion at all that Jamie Whincup had anything at all to do with that incident on Mountain Straight, they people were absolutely outraged. But if you have a look at it, it's pretty clear that that he was bumping up against someone that he was certainly, whether he caused it, I wouldn't say go as far as to say he caused it, but he was certainly very, very heavily involved, and no one sort of pointed that out at all. It was just like Jamie just magically went off by himself, and he didn't magically go off by himself. He was involved in it.
You could spend 12 months on doing it slow-mo and every single angle, every single camera, and every little tap and thing. And, unfortunately, it's all going to, culminate to nothing in the end, because it's just 4 or 5 cars wide and on that amount of tarmac and grass and water, there's going to be aquaplaning, rear wheel spin and slap and tickle. So the other thing as well, though, too, everyone's just mentioned in the room, and hopefully everyone's just picked up on it. You first kicked off with Roland Dane. Well, Roland Dane, whether you love him or hate him, he does always have something intelligent to say. And
I don't know about that.
Oh, well, okay. He has, he doesn't have probably where he's coming from, but he is very concise with his comments. The other thing as well too is as we all know, he has stepped away from running a particular Triple Eight racing team, but still remains in the forum of the motorsports diaries of everybody. And I don't know if anyone noticed, and you just mentioned, guys, Brett, he will be having a regular column on Speed Cafe in future, more from this week onwards, as already has done his first editorial. So
I find that interesting. I find there's a lot happening at Speed Cafe at the moment that I find interesting.
Yeah, and we've talked about the hierarchy going upwards and higher and higher. But yeah, Roland's going to be doing at least once or twice a week, possibly editorial. He's already started. So yeah, there's going to be an influence there. And as you said, he's a much loved, and you either love to hate him or hate to love him. So yeah, fair enough. But he does have some good points sometimes. I'm not a huge fan of the way they go about things from that particular area of the motorsport, but he can be right, and the other ones
Look, I think the point. Yeah, no, I think the point is, I mean, if you're going to look at the column that he's going, it'll be interesting to get his insight. But I mean, you've got to put that insight through the filter of, he's obviously going to say things that sort of benefit or are to the promotion of Triple Eight. I mean, he's hardly. It's funny, he said something about like it's really great to be a part of Speed Cafe because it's an independent motorsport media outlet. If it was a totally independent motorsport media outlet, Roland Dane would not be a columnist there. That's the bottom line there. I mean, but anyway. I get in trouble. I've raised this with people at auto. I've had arguments with all sorts of journalists over the years about sort of the things that had happened if I was the editor of some of these magazines, and they all sort of agreed that none of them would work for me, because I'd hold a few of them to account, because there's a few sort of dodgy things going on. But anyway, by the way, Mark, no, we did miss you, Mark. I mean, we certainly missed you.
Yes, we do.
Yes, that's interesting. The Enforcer and the Dudes episode with Roland Dane and Peter Adderton. Speaking of, I'll get to you in a sec, Peter. I just want to say, speaking of Peter Adderton,
didn't check that podcast, but I heard there was a lot of commentary about them commentating and a few home truths. And it was one of their better episodes.
There's 4 people who have very strong opinions and are not frightened to put them out there. But speaking of Peter Adderton, I mean, he's probably not my favourite person in terms of some of the things he says and does. But you've got to say he puts his money where his mouth is. He's a great supporter of the sport and of young talent. And just before we went to air, this was announced, and we saw this, and that's the S5000 that's going to be driven at the Gold Coast street race by Jordan Boys, sponsored by Boost. And it looks, I don't know about you guys, I think that looks $1 million. That looks very sexy indeed.
One just as you just really on the cool. Point of the those guys that you mentioned, while everyone's getting to peruse and drool over that wonderful S5000 there, I did see the Mr. Adderton, and he is a man of the people. He was up at the top of the mountain, hanging out with all the locals and having a chat with them. And you got to, and I've seen Paul Morris at the track many a times. He doesn't shirk away from actually catching up with the public or listening to people and talking to people. He's not one of those ones. I'm too good for the masses. I'm just going to go hide in a corner and sip my latte. Somebody else can deal with the PR. So, and from what all it's worth, I never obviously had much to do with the enforcer because he's a little bit older than my era, and I missed out on that. But I never heard of any problems with him as well too. So as you said, and the great part about it is
I'll talk to you later.
Okay, yeah. Well, I think you might. Yeah. The good thing about it though is that all those guys don't actually have an allegiance to anyone or anything these days. I mean, Paul's got his finance and obviously he's super cheap, his company and stuff like all that sort of stuff. But they don't owe anything to supercars or anything like that, and they're not afraid to say, as you say, they'll call a spade a spade. They will, they don't. They're not going to.
Oh, no doubt about that. Pete, what were you going to say before?
We've kind of moved on, but I actually liked the carnage at the beginning of the Bathurst 1000. Pardon me, because it was a true endurance race. It finished up being a true endurance race where you had cars taped up and things.
Yeah, well, it certainly did look. It certainly had that, but that's why it would be great to have more endurance races. And it's looking increasingly like the Sandown 500 will come back, and that's one of the delays that they've got with the calendar. The calendar is usually announced in Bathurst week. Now, in an interview with Mark Fogarty on his Parked Up podcast, Shane Howard from Supercars Australia was saying that the calendar is 95% sort of locked in. There's a few dots that have got to be, a few I's that have got to be dotted, a few T's that have got to be crossed. But basically, they've got together the calendar for next year. They haven't announced it yet, but the word around and what's coming out of the teams is they believe that there probably will be a Sandown 500 next year, which would be I think it would be a really welcome thing, especially for all those co-drivers to and the teams to just get some to get some good experience behind the wheel, get on the track, do a proper race in what will probably be damp conditions. Let's face it. I mean, how many dry Sandown 500s have there been?
Hey, let's not forget the Gen 3's car coming, and everyone's getting a little bit of 5 minutes of testing here and there, but those co-drivers aren't going to be doing a huge amount of miles in that particular new car. And by all reports, a few of the drivers say it's a little fairly different. It's a completely different car from the car they're driving now, the Gen 2 car to the Gen 3. Obviously, for all the reasons. I'm not going to go into conceptual stuff right now. But yeah, those co-drivers are going to need some kilometres in those cars next year. And the old three endurance race format of Gold Coast, Sandown, and Bathurst, it'll bring the fans back in masses.
Yeah, well, as SB saying, it obviously felt pretty much the same as you, Pete. The increasing car numbers, the privateer teams, and the wildcards made the race feel like a classic. Safety cars, driver areas, etc. And that was it. It was to have those extra cars in. There was only I think it was 4 of them was there. But yeah, I'd like to see a few more wildcards. I'd like to see a few of the Super 2. But obviously next year that won't be possible because they'll all be racing the Gen 3 cars, and they may not have enough to go around. That seems to be the problem at the moment. There are Shane Howard and his team there were a bit concerned in having adequate numbers ready to go for the opening round at Newcastle next year. So hopefully they will get those cars on the track for next year. But they are sort of struggling at the moment.
Being the aficionados that we've got below, like Knackers has just come up there and all the other different stuff, just 2 bits and pieces of information that did come out from the weekend. One, what's Premier's owner, Peter Zibris. He bought Shane Van Gisbergen's car a couple of years ago. I think we might have even talked about it at the time on Full Course Yellow. So he paid a touch over $200,000 for that car before it even raced a mile yet. So that's going to be celebrated. And he's already said that Giz's car in a couple of rounds, when it's finally finished up, it's not even going to be raced again. It's going straight to the pool room because when he bought it back then, he obviously hadn't won the championship yet. He's won a couple now. It's won Bathurst twice and et cetera, et cetera. So that is going straight to the pool room, that particular car. And the other thing I saw as well too, as a little bit about getting sidetracked a bit, is the Bathurst 12-hour next year is obviously taking some entries, and I did see the wall racing Hurricane Lamborghini's already got entered in for it, and that's a very popular.
Well, they're entered for the Bathurst International, not for the 12-hour. And as you can see at the bottom, the Bathurst 12-hour at the moment, there's interesting. Sports Car 365, the American publication, has come up with this. They were speaking to Mercedes head of motorsport and GT racing during the recent Indianapolis 8 hours, which Mercedes won. There's a few highlights of that on tonight's show on In Pit Lane, but they're very worried at the moment. There's it's not a war of words or anything, but there is a basic disagreement between Stefan Rattel at SRO, who are sort of responsible for the Intercontinental GT Challenge, of which Bathurst is the opening round, and Supercars Australia, who bought in and got into that because Supercars Australia basically want the race to be as it was this year. They want to keep it as a Pro-Am event because they want to try and encourage basically mostly local, rich individuals to come along and have their chance. They feel they'll get a better field in terms of numbers. They feel they'll get a better field for the race, and obviously more money if they make it basically a Pro-Am race only, as it was this year. Whereas Stefan Rattel is saying, no, we want it to go back to what it was, and that is we want full factory teams. We want full, 3 gold standard or platinum standard drivers. We really want to make it sort of, the elite. So there's a conflict between the two of them at the moment. The other thing that makes it really difficult is the fact that the second round of the Intercontinental GT Challenge Championship is coming up at Kyalami. The 8 hours of Kyalami is coming up basically about a month later, and Mercedes have already said there is no way that we're going to be able to get a car to Australia, then to South Africa, and then back to Europe. So they're saying we will have to send basically 2 cars and 2 teams, or hire a car there and have it presented, or miss out on one of those races, because they just can't do. They just can't do that. And then, of course, it was announced that there's there's a new 12-hour GT3 race, which was announced only today, actually, for Sepang around that time of year. So Malaysia's getting back involved in that. It's just such a crowded calendar. And the logistics of moving cars around, it's everybody wants their slice of the pie now, and the slices are getting smaller and smaller and smaller, to the point where eventually people will go, well, I don't want those crumbs. So, yeah.
Just a bit of quick news, as this SES have just started evacuating Seymour. So...
Oh, okay. So if you're watching us from Seymour right now, don't go.
I was going to say hundreds. They're evacuating hundreds of people around Seymour right now as we speak. So I've just got a notification.
Yeah, and that's.
I'm wondering if. I was just going to say, I was wondering if you can even drive down to Phillip Island. Remember that time we had to go through the floods just past Bitten?
Oh God, yeah. I mean, there were so many times. I mean, it's not as bad as it used to be, but like as I said, growing up in and sort of the family coming from Wonthaggi, basically every May school holidays, we'd get sort of an extra week of school holidays because we couldn't get back from Wonthaggi because the mouth of the Powlet would be flooded all around that area. We got flooded. We had a couple of times down there. We were very lucky at the time though, because that was when we had the sponsorship from the Ramada Resort and we were staying there, so we were quite comfortable. But and we were getting those pictures. I mean, as SB saying, the pictures from Stoner Corner are insane. We had that. You might have been there for that meeting for a Victorian States. I think it was a Victorian State round, or it could have been the Shannon's Nationals. And we woke up on the Sunday morning getting ready to head out to the track, and some of the people out there, and perhaps Knackers might have been one of them, just sort of had posted online, have a look at the track. Nobody's racing today, and sure enough, sort of within about 2 hours of those pictures coming out, we were back on the track. So it does drain really quickly there. So at this stage, what will be the problem for this weekend, if you're going down there, they've already announced, if you're going down on your bike, Not a major problem. There is parking at or near the track, but if you're going down in a car, you cannot park anywhere on the what they're saying, that you have to drive into Cowes, park in Cowes, and get the shuttle bus back to the track. So that's the only thing, because there is no car parking available at all, apart from sort of, tender vehicles and VIPs and all that nonsense.
And
But officials, accessibility people. So if you're going down there and you need to get you will still get in. But if you're just jumping in and saying, like as I was planning to do, sort of, I might just go down and no, you're going to have to get the
other
shuttle
outrage
bus.
too. The other outrage that's come up in the last couple of days, and it has been going on for weeks anyway, is that they put up a post 2 days ago and said, the Australian Grand Prix Corporation for MotoGP, don't forget to buy your tickets before you go, because this year is the first year they can only be online. So, yes, you must pre-purchase your ticket. Obviously, have it in a digital wallet or a screenshot or whatever the QR code or barcode that they usually do. Must have your ticket prepaid, because... And there's this is ridiculous. No camping, no parking, no ticket at the gate anymore, blah, blah, blah. You don't want... And yes, unfortunately, there will be people, but there's also saying that, well, will you give us a refund if it's rained out and we don't want to go, or if it still runs and it's still limited? So just be wary, ladies and gentlemen. If you're going to go, please plan ahead. Put a whole day aside. Be prepared for delays. Look, there could even be buses and coaches that are even going to have trouble dealing with the conditions that are on the way down there, etc. So you must prepay for your ticket online. And Brett and I do events from time to time, and obviously have to enter it through different circumstances, whether it's press or a public. Please make sure you have your ticket ready as a photo on your phone or away, because trying to get processed at the gate down there, you will have a lot of difficulty unless you have your digital ticket with you.
Yeah, Doc and I were working out at Sandown with similar conditions last Friday, and it was really unfortunate because there were so many people, and let's face it was an older demographic that was there, and people were just turning up and with their wallet in hand saying, "Oh, where do I get a ticket, mate?" And
get the cash out.
You had to say to them, "I'm sorry, but you got to go online," or "I don't have a phone," and it was unfortunately, it's the way of the world now, and it's going to be the way for most of these major events in future. Is that you are going to have to book in advance, and you are going to get the ticket on your phone or printed out. Look, just a tip on behalf of people like Doc and I who do these things. Print it out it's much easier. It scans a lot easier. It's much more reliable.
Well, if it's going to be raining, have it folded up as well too. Don't have a soggy.
Yeah, keep it out. Well, we did have a couple of those. Oh, here's my ticket. There was just this black mess of whatever. Okay. Hey, speaking of which, before we move on to more Grand MotoGP, so a bit of Formula One stuff, I want to get this because this was announced today. This was teased a couple of days ago. Of course, we've seen sort of the hypercars coming out with people like Ferrari and Porsche, Cadillac, Peugeot. All of those, the Honda Acura, all those cars that are running at the moment, BMW. The one that we hadn't seen was Alpine. Now, we still haven't seen the race car, but coming up this weekend, the start of the week over in Paris, is the Paris Motor Show, the first time that's been held for many, many a year. And Alpine are going to release something there which is called the Alpenglow. And it's a concept car. It's a hydrogen-powered hypercar concept. But if you're wondering what the car that's going to is going to look like on the grid at Le Mans in 2024, it might look a little something like this.
The Alpenglow is a unique optical phenomenon that appears just before sunrise. It symbolizes perfectly a new era for Alpine. A manifesto also signals the clean emission ambitions of Alpine.
Alpenglow opens a new chapter in Alpine's design history. We design from the inside to the outside. And the idea is to have this form-follow-function approach. We decided to put the driver in the middle and the two hydrogen tanks on the sides and the light signature on the front. In this car, it will be stretched into something totally crazy.
With hydrogen, our concept car represents the next step of our clean emission future.
We decided, thanks to the tanks and to the exhaust pipe, to show the hydrogen and the vapor of water out of the car.
The hydrogen technology, especially on the combustion mode, is the perfect vehicle for sensations and passions and emotions that a sports car is supposed to deliver. It is our vision of both future sport and road cars.
Alpenglow dares with innovation, elegance and sportiness. This spirit will drive our dream garage.
Our manifesto combines driving pleasure with sustainable future. In the near term, our dream garage will be made of 3 fully electric cars. At the heart of Alpine DNA, it's racing. It's born from racing, made by racers, for racers at heart. We will keep that in all Alpines. Every Alpine will deliver pleasure to drive.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, putting aside all of the less sustainability and the vapor and the beauty and all the rest of it, it looks a lot like, to me, is it just me, or does that look an awful lot like the Peugeot that's running around at the moment in terms of the lack of a rear wing and...
Also looks like a Val Morgan hat.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's obviously style over substance, but of course the French do style over substance better than anybody else in
You've
the
been
world.
going to the movies too much, Richard.
Yes, I need a life.
But you're right. No, I think I agree with you. You nailed it, especially that the sound effects. I think you just got it.
The sound effects were fantastic. I mean, I love those sound, but it does. I think you will find that they won't be. I'm assuming they won't be using like the hydrogen technology, but I imagine that car is.
Oh, they
going
don't
to
talk about that, did they? Also, I was just so wrapped up in bloody Richard. Right,
You forgot to take your VR glasses off.
Just open my eyes again. Anyway, yeah.
But I reckon it looks fantastic. I reckon it's a fantastic looking car, and to see that on the grid at Le Mans is going to be just brilliant to see something like that.
Enthusiasm with doing that showpiece, that media release that we just saw, is as good as if the cars is as good as the media release. That it'll be fantastic. And look, but they are having a crack. Just before we go on to Nakas over there, the Avalon Air Show, and it does relate to this. Did anyone see the presser for Speeder today? So just to update.
Oh yes. Oh God.
Well, just give it a chance. So early March this year, everyone's very familiar with Ayrton Senna in motor racing, and his nephew Bruno Senna, who has was earned his ticket in Formula One many years ago, and he's done a lot of other racing categories as well, too. So Airspeeder employed Bruno early this year, March 10th, and he's been hanging out there in South Australia over there, and they've been doing some test runs on some racing. So these can actually accommodate a human being in them if they want to. So they're using e-racer type gamers, to world-class gamers, to do these test runs, and they're actually going okay over there. They reckon within 12 months they'll have two pilots in the thing, and they'll be flying independently and racing each other out in the middle of nowhere. So they're still going. You bought the promo up about, was it 18 months ago?
Oh God, earlier than that. I mean, the first stories we ran about it was way before the pandemic. It was probably even before you joined. They've been on that. They've been sort of plugging that for years now, and they're sort of slowly but surely getting there. So I got that press release, and I just thought, I must admit, it doesn't excite me terribly.
It doesn't have to. You don't have to run it. It doesn't excite you. But I'll tell you what, though, those things are absolutely. They said that about jet skis back in the 80s as well, though, too. And look at that. The jet skis have evolved into those things that they call sit-downs, which are not a real jet ski anyway. They're a joke. But anyway, they have to get people that can't actually balance and to sit on them somehow.
Hey, Doc,
Well,
I'll be looking forward to it because, air shows have never been dangerous. So I'll just go along there
yes.
and feel as safe as houses.
Yes,
You
I mean,
talk about
that's
Avalon.
something we need. Yeah, that's air shows frighten the hell out of me. I mean, you just go onto YouTube at any stage and say air show tragedy, and you can absolutely waste a whole night of watching people being blown to pieces and burning to death.
Well, I can guarantee one thing next year for the air show, which usually happens every biannual year. This time around, the Russians won't be coming across. I can guarantee that.
Well, you don't know. You can't guarantee that because they might come across. They mightn't come across for the air show, but they might come across.
Here's a gift from us.
Pete, Pete's got a post there. You're an accessibility person now, I believe.
That's according to the MotoGP Corporation.
Yes, I think so. Yes,
there were people asking, "I've got a disability. Can I have access?" And they would reply in a post, "Yes, there is accessibility options available." And they said, "Well, can you please tell us what they are?" And they said, "Well, read the disclaimer and read all the fine print." They still came back and said, "I've read it all. Can you please explain it still?" And they said, "Yes, you can enter. We will be having a spot." Well, you're looking at, well, why didn't you just tell us that in the first place?
But anyway, now let's talk about. I mean, we do sort of preview the MotoGP in there. Jack Miller. Very, very happy. He said today he was absolutely buzzing to be back. Also interesting that today they had press conferences today down at Phillip Island for the accredited media down there.
Well, they had to ride down.
Yeah, well, they had the ride down. Incidentally, I was wondering what happened to the famous Cranbourne ride down. That is not happening this year. In fact, it is not happening again at this stage. The city of Casey have basically wiped their hands of it. They're not. They've cancelled even before anything else had happened. They've cancelled this year's run, and they've said they will no longer support the event. So unfortunately, that part of the tradition of the Saturday morning, all riding down, meeting together at Cranbourne, and then heading down to the island.
Craig Huggins and I used to do it. So I was part of the radio station. Craig Huggins was another one, and we used to MC the event and go through the crowd. And I used to give away tickets each year to some of the riders out of the blue, because back then you could buy them at the gate. So some of them didn't have tickets that were all lined up, those thousands. So Huggy and I used to give them away and enjoy it every single year. And I think probably the reason is, so let's give it a couple of years. I know a couple of people that will be running for council elections when they finally eventuate again, and that will be probably one of the things that will be high on their priority when it comes around each year. So
I think the argument was, and I can see this apart from it is the only sort of, there was traffic chaos every year that had happened, and they said a lot of the shops there, particularly in at Cranbourne Plaza, and I spoke to a lot of them because I do a bit of shopping there. I know a few of those people, and they absolutely hated it because you could not get, shoppers could not get into Cranbourne Plaza.
The shops on the inside, the shops on the inside hated it. The shops along the strips loved it because everyone would walk up and down and frequent the shops that were on the strip, and a lot of businesses that were on the outside loved it because then they opened their doors, opened their gates, and they use the roads.
But either way, it's not happening this year. So I mean, if you're thinking of, well, I'll go down there. They did have the ride down with Jack and Remy out of Melbourne on Wednesday. So Remy Gardner is also saying, he sort of said, he basically said, this is a terrifying thought. He said, this will be my one chance possibly to ride a MotoGP machine at Phillip Island, so he's really sort of hanging out for it because, I mean, he's going to get two goes at it because he'll sort of warm up on the MotoGP bike this weekend, and then of course early in 2023 he'll come back as a part of the World Superbike Championship and run down there back again. But as he said this might be the only chance I ever get to run a MotoGP bike, so he's going to enjoy it. Okay.
Just on that as well, though,
Brett,
too.
I think we'll be wrapping up soon.
Yep.
KTM have KTM have unveiled their RC8C racing prototype from 12 months ago. They can confirm that 24 of these special track-only bikes will be coming to Australia next year. So there you go. That's hot off the press a few hours
So
ago.
you're putting in an order for one, Doc?
I'll have to sacrifice a bit. The interest rates have gone up, remember? But yeah, maybe I might get a second-hand one if Jack finishes off, writes one off, or bins one in the first couple of rounds. Because, as I said, there's only 24 that are coming to Australia, and usually after he wears out a bike, or even at the drop of a hat after he's raced one, old Thriller will get rid of it. So I'll put my hand, catch up with him down there and put my hand up and say, yeah, if the first one and cap off the rank you finish with, I'll have. Thanks, Jack. So,
well, as I said, if you tune over to Channel 31 at 9:30, you can watch our preview of that. And we've also got Dan Cully as well for music as well. Yes, Richard?
I just
Richard,
wanted to say before we go, with all this really... Brett, before we go, and we'll go soon, with all this terrible weather, I want to thank the marshals. I've watched them being out day after day in the worst weather. They've just been doing a fabulous job. We just can't thank them enough.
Everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, they're not getting, because, I mean, even though there's, so there's two, 4 wheels and 2 wheels, there is a huge crossover in terms of the marshals. There's a big crossover between them. So there'll be, we've seen, Dave is going down there. Dave was at Bathurst last week. He was up at Morgan Park the week before, like doing admittedly some commentary work up there. Exactly. But then he came back and he was doing sort of, the officialing at Bathurst.
He's promoted himself up into the office there. He thanked all the guys that were at the track because he was in the warmth.
In the warmth, yes.
At least he paid tribute to the ones out there.
And then you got Dave, and then you've got our mate Jeremy will be down there on the weekend. Yeah, Shane Priest was up at Bathurst, getting soaking wet and camping up there with all the rest of the people. So yeah, they're
all mudlarks, aren't they?
Yeah, that's it. Okay, so anything else before we go? I'm just sort of looking through. I'm not sure that there's...
well, you put it actually on the ticker, and I didn't know beforehand. This was not pre-planned. Congratulations to Mark Webber, Jody at Carlton, and many others. I come up today, I saw a post from the first 10-pin bowling. I think, what's her name? Her name escapes me right now, but she's been inducted to the first 10-pin bowler.
Pinky Tuscadero.
That doesn't sound anything not like it, but that'll do. We'll run with that one.
Hey, she's got to be called. Hey, she's a bowler. She's got to be called like Pinky Tuscadero. I mean, they're all called Pinky Tuscadero.
In California,
it's
in Australia.
One of the pink ladies from Greece, isn't it?
Yeah.
Anyway, congratulations to all of them that have been inducted into the Sports Australia Hall of Fame. That's the acronym on my
and of course Mark joins Sir Jack Brabham, Alan Jones, Peter Brock, and Alan Moffat as motorsport people. And I can say, I mean, us from patting ourselves on the back and feeling good about sort of like what we've had over the years. 5 motorsport people in the Hall of Fame, 5 people that we've interviewed on In Pit Lane over the years. So so that was congratulations to Mark, and I mean, he's obviously behind the scenes now doing his media stuff, but also working with Oscar Piastri, and was obviously very heavily involved in putting that deal together, the controversial deal, but a deal that I think will be pretty good for young Oscar.
Unofficial?
No, he's a very official. He's very official manager.
No, he's an official person, but. Yeah. Anyway.
Here's the just a reminder. Yes, so if you didn't tune in at the start, Fast Friday, the return of drag racing to Calder Park, of course tomorrow, has been called off. Also, the Drag Challenge, which is a great adventure where they basically drive all over Victoria, race at Mildura and Swan Hill and down at Heathcote, and all the rest of it over the course of the week. That's not happening either because of the weather. Keep our fingers crossed for.
Heathcote's been called off. I've seen some pics already today.
Yeah, so that's all called off. So it's going to be a fairly, apart from the Grand Prix. So let's keep our fingers crossed for the Grand Prix to go ahead, because there won't be much else on otherwise locally. Now, coming up next week on In Pit Lane, I'm hoping to have the first of our guests from this year's historic Sandown. More on that later. And as I said, the week afterwards, our guest will be Neil Kearney to talk about Longford. But anyway, I think that's basically us done for the week, because we want people to sort of go and have a pit stop, go and have a toilet break or something, and get ready for tonight's edition of In Pit Lane, 9:30 on Channel 31, or if you're watching on YouTube, stay on YouTube and flick across there. It'll go to where it'll premiere live on YouTube at 9:30 as well, including bonus content, bonus song, and a bit of sort of behind-the-scenes stuff with our guest Tyrone Fleming. But tonight, guys, hope you enjoyed the earlier night. It's absolutely throwing me for a loop, I can tell you what. But anyway,
I was going to say we'll get to bed at a reasonable time now.
you'll get to bed. I'll still get to bed
He's
at
the
a
most
reasonable
adaptable
time.
man I've ever
Put
met.
it this way, Brett and I had
A reasonable time for me to go to bed is 4:30 in the morning, and that's
Saying
probably what I'm
goodbye,
going to
we
do tonight.
Brett's conversation between myself and Brett this week was Brett called me when I was asleep early in the week, and the next morning I messaged him while he was asleep. So that's how we have to do things sometimes. Two ships passing.
Yes, you're asleep. You're asleep at
I hope you were in
8:30 at
different
night. I'm
houses
asleep
when
at
you were doing that.
I'm asleep at 8. I'm at least at 8:30 in the morning. So there you go. If I'm lucky. Okay, guys, have a good weekend. Stay safe. If you're going down anywhere on the road or track this weekend, stay safe, everybody. Stay tuned for In Pit Lane on Channel 31, and we'll see you next week at the earlier time of 8:30 here on Full Course Yellow. But until then, thanks for joining us, everyone. Bye for now.
Happy MotoGP weekend.